planes, just like the trains, the environmental noise. Over the last few years in my apartment, these industrial sounds started filling the place. Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport started routing traffic over New Brighton for some reason. We're 22 miles away from the airport, but they routed it anyway. However, the two examples you hear here are not those ordinary jet and propeller planes, which were incredibly annoying, certainly destroyed any recording I was doing. These two are military planes. They're like B-52s or B-18s. Those huge honking-ass things from World War II. Somebody needs to tell somebody that the war is over, because they were flying that thing so close overhead. I literally could have hit them with a rock. If not with my hands, definitely with a slingshot. And to fly planes, the loudest planes ever created by human beings, over residential areas every single week at that level, 80 years after World War II ended, is just inexcusable. Again, it's the Meannesota mentality. I don't give a damn about other people. It's all about me. Sex sounds. Sorry guys, I know you're excited about that one, but there's not any hooting or hollering or screaming in there. This is the same thing over and over again. Muffy and the Leech were very violent in bed, and I have to be honest with you, I should not know that. I don't want to know that, but they weren't going to let me avoid knowing that, because they injected so much noise into my apartment. Please read their profile on my website. You're not going to believe what happened with these sex sounds, but basically this is just bouncing beds. The squeaking sounds. It's like something out of a movie. I had to deal with that shit all the time. Let's see what sonic booms. Sonic booms. Oh god. They're literally that. You have to get into things with physics, like the attack and release, decay, things like that. But sonic booms were so loud and violent that you would reasonably expect them to damage the building. They're too violent. They literally cause an earthquake in my apartment. And the jackass in particular was prone to at least one of those every day, usually several every day, and they just come out of nowhere. It's not like I'd hear him walk over, hear a little something shuffling around, and then a boom. It would just be quiet, and then boom, out of nowhere. And again, the jackass didn't have a job, so day and night were the same thing to him, and people who worked for a living like me were the victims. Squeaks. Our floors squeaked in this old building. Shouldn't have been a problem. I knew about it when I moved in. I found the squeaky areas, put furniture there, and walked around them. That's why the guy downstairs didn't know that I was even there. The people upstairs were not so nice. They apparently did the opposite. They put their furniture where it was quiet, and they made sure that they walked on the squeakiest areas over and over and over. Vacuum cleaners. When I vacuum, I turn it on, I roll it back and forth across the floor, and it sucks things on the floor into the vacuum cleaner. What these people do with their vacuum cleaners, I can't even imagine. It could involve masturbation. It could involve construction. I don't know. Listen to it and you tell me. These people could turn a vacuum cleaner into a weapon of mass destruction in terms of noise. They just don't give a damn. It's only other people. It's only other people who are bothered by it. And the whole world revolves around them in Minnesota, so just listen to it, you know what I mean. Vocalizations, okay, well, these aren't as good as they should be because I had so many people talking loud, yelling, and screaming into my apartment all the time. But, it was never my goal to, as much shame as they deserve, it was never my goal to single them out and to humiliate them publicly and all that. So I tried to avoid capturing that. I don't want to hear their private conversations. So even if I did end up recording it, without realizing it, I don't even feel comfortable listening to it. It's not an invasion of privacy because they voluntarily injected that into my home. It had no business being there. But so I've limited the vocalizations to things that you really can't identify for the most part. There's a couple times you can hear a statement that someone makes, but they're basically sounds. But check them out. You'll see what I mean. The last category I'd talk about is the WTF, the what the fucks. They're different than miscellaneous because they're just, you listen to them, for the most part, you listen to them and go like, what the fuck was that? Which is something that I experienced every single day for 3 years in my new Brighton ghetto apartment. So there you go. There's some background information on the Noisy Neighbor drum kit. I hope that will make using this kit a little more interesting because now you're going to know where these noises came from. If I may, I'd just like to take a moment to explain why I recorded these and how I recorded them. If you look at the liner notes that come with the drum kit, I drew a diagram of my apartment. And just so you know, my apartment was on the second of 3 floors. It was located in a corner. So on the side of my bathroom is where the adult child lived, and that was the only immediate neighbor I had. But I did have, I had immediately above and below me, but as far as on my same floor, it was only the adult child. So I was immediately surrounded by 3 apartments, otherwise exposed to the outside. When I first started recording, the only reason I did it at all was because my landlord refused to do anything about it, and he would just, out of hand, without any competent investigation, just say it isn't even happening, which was crazy, insane. So I thought, well, okay, I'll record it. So I put a portable microphone right in the center, about in between these 2 microphones roughly, and I recorded it. And when I played it for the landlord, he would hear this noise that you're hearing, and he would just say that he still didn't believe it. I was hypersensitive to noise. He just said whatever he needed to say to get out of doing his job. So at some point I realized, okay, I'm going to have to document the daylights out of this, for many reasons possibly. So I set up 2 permanent microphones, good microphones. One was in the center of the living room, the other one was in the kitchen near the bedroom and bathroom doors. And the reason I had 2 was because I wanted a stereo recording. That allows me to record, to document the motion, kind of the Doppler effect, if you will, from the foot stomping, and from that motion you can determine how forcefully they were banging on the floor. Also, if they bang on one part of the apartment, you can hear it cause rattling and disturbance on another part of the apartment. And again, that helps you, from a physics standpoint, calculate just how much energy they had to inject into my home for that to happen. So that's why I recorded in stereo. Believe me, I never had any intention of recording 7,000 hours of these idiots. I mean, that's 9.5 months if you listen to it 24 hours a day. I built a home studio so I could work on my own projects. I wanted to do my own podcasts. I wanted to create my own CDs. I wanted to do voice recordings. I didn't spend all that money for equipment, which incidentally I'm now losing. All of it. Everything I own. I didn't get all that just so I could record these morons. But I didn't have any choice because none of the authorities in the state of Minnesota would do anything about it. I had to document what had happened, and this was the only way I had available. Because in the end, documenting the noise didn't just prove what my neighbors did, it also proves the extraordinary negligence and apathy and mean-spiritedness on the part of all the authorities who had legal and professional obligations to stop this noise, but they refused to do so. They refused to even try. They just didn't care. And if there's a summary of my experience in Minnesota, 8 years of living there, that's probably as good as any. They just don't care about other people. That's why I call it Meannesota. Not everybody in Minnesota, obviously, but this dominant subculture, which is a cult by any reasonable definition of what a cult is. Scientology, Jonestown, Manson family, this dominant subculture in Minnesota is a cult, and it is damned dangerous. And people need to figure this out. Get this Minnesota nice myth brushed right out of their minds and start dealing with reality again. Because if you move into Minnesota or start doing business with these people without understanding what you're really dealing with, you could end up where I am today, losing everything you've spent your entire life working for something as silly as a bunch of noisy neighbors. That's Minnesota, and that's why I want to escape from Minnesota. So I guess I'll end this up by saying, please, 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 send a donation if you like this drum kit. And frankly, if you don't like the drum kit, please send a donation just to help a good man get out of a bad, bad situation. I could really use the help. Thank you so much. I really hope you enjoy this kit. The good news is there's some potential for some really great stuff to come out of this. And make sure I hear it if you make something, okay? I want to hear it. Thanks. I moved to a state with twin cities. To live there long I did commit. But rather than Minnesota nice, the people there treat me like shaving cream. Be nice and clean. Shave every day and you'll always look keen.